I have this problem where if I really, really love a plugin and it's modeled after a piece of hardware that actually exists, I need the hardware in my life. Now, I've been fortunate enough to have been working in this industry for many years and have saved a whole bunch of money and dumped every dime I've ever made into gear. So this has happened a handful of times where I've loved the plugin so much, I've bought the hardware. First up was the SSL style compressor. The G-Bus compressor was on my mix bus forever as a plugin. And finally moved over to the Serpent SB4001, which is a recreation of the old SSL quad comp. Next up was the 1176. I've been using 1176 plugins for, I don't know, since the very beginning of mixing from 21 years ago. Finally picked up a real Universal Audio 1176. Next up was the distressor. I absolutely adore all of the plug-in distressors out there, and eventually I had to have the hardware. I mean, the list goes on and on. I absolutely love the DBX 160 in plug-in form, so I picked up the Audioscape 260 VU. I absolutely love Neve 1073 channel strips. And while all of those are high-end, expensive pieces of gear, they were attainable pieces of gear. You save up money for a long time, and eventually you buy them one at a time over many years. But this one, I'm not sure I was ever gonna be able to acquire this one. This is my Holy Grail Mix Bus EQ. Let's get into it. Now, I've been using the plug-in version of the SPL PQ for a long, long time. It has been probably the most common plug-in that I used as an EQ on my mix bus before I got the hardware for years. And there's a couple things that I loved about it. One, it sounded unreal. The top end was so clean and clear, but also sweet sounding. It just had everything that I wanted in an EQ. But it also worked on every single genre that I worked on. When it comes to mix bus processing, this is a difficult one because a lot of gear has a specific vibe or a specific color, and it may not be the most appropriate thing for all genres. This is one of the reasons why real high-end mastering engineers, you'll see that they'll have a bunch of EQs and a bunch of compressors because it's all about matching whatever the music is that they're working on with the gear that's most appropriate for that song. And what I found myself doing with the PQ, with the plugin, and certainly now with the hardware, is I just eventually kind of stopped using every other mix bus EQ that I used to use all the time. I used to have a handful of different ones, and I would use, this one for rock and this one for pop and maybe this one for indie. And then once I got the SPL PQ plugin, I just kind of slowly stopped using all of the others. And I was just using the PQ for the longest time. And this is where my obsession became for getting the hardware. Now you can scroll way back on the channel, and in many videos I've talked about my love for this plugin and that I will likely one day get the hardware. But it's not inexpensive. And so we're gonna start with that. We're gonna start with the only negative thing that I can say about this piece of gear, because from here on out, it's gonna be me praising it. Now, currently, right now, at the time of filming this, the SPL PQ is listed on Sweetwater for sale for $6,699, which means it's unobtainium for a lot of you watching. It was unobtainium for me for a very, very, very long time. And so what I want to do in this video is just show you how good something can actually be. Kind of just fanboy out over it myself. But what I'm not trying to do is tell you that you need to spend $7,000 on a mastering level EQ. So I just want to get that out of the way. If you're into this sort of thing, if you absolutely love this, if you download the plugin, which you should do, go get the plugin, and I'll put links down below for all of this, obviously. go get the plugin. If you love the plugin and you use it on a whole bunch of stuff and it's within your means, then maybe consider picking one of these up. I just want to get this out there that I'm not trying to pressure any of you to purchase such an expensive piece of gear, because this is the single most expensive piece of gear in my studio. And it's not lost on me what that means, what that is. So now that that's out of the way, it's all praise from here on out. Now, first up, when I unboxed this, the craziest thing to me is I opened the manual, and in the manual is test result after test result after test result. The exact specs of every single thing you could possibly test for this EQ, and the test result and how it passed every single one of them. This is a true mastering grade EQ. And what that means is everything must be very precise, and it must be perfectly matched from left to right. And there must be perfectly controlled crosstalk. Now, when you're talking mastering grade equipment, these things are all very, very important. However, I was so blown away to see them include all of the test results in the manual for this particular unit. That's awesome. So what I want to do is I want to give you guys a rundown of what this unit is and what it does. And then we will definitely get to some sound examples. I've got an awesome song that I've just mastered recently to show off this unit. I am so pumped about this. Can you tell? Can you tell how pumped I am? I've already had this thing here for like 7 months. And I've been using it non-stop for that amount of time. And it's finally time to make a video on it. So let's get into it. Okay, let's talk about the SPL PQ Mastering Equalizer. I want to show you guys everything that it does, and then we'll listen to some sound examples here shortly. But before I do that, I do want to make something real clear. When I said that the price of this was its only con, it's not because I didn't think that it's worth it. I do genuinely believe that it is worth the money. What I meant by that is just there's not a ton of people that are going to be able to afford or justify the cost for something like this. This is for a very small percentage of the people out there. But for those people that are interested, that have the budget, that have the skill set to take advantage of this, that are working at a level that they can justify something like this, boy, is it unreal. Okay, so first things first, we've got 5 bands. We've got left and right, and we have 5 different bands here, independent on both sides. Now, you do have a link switch right here, and what that link switch does is that link switch will link together the controls for the proportional or constant EQ, and so that is linked on both sides. You can hear that these are all, I'm guessing, relays in there. I mean, very, very high quality. All of the buttons and the knobs feel, I mean, they all feel absolutely incredible. The pots are detinted. They are kind of a shallow detent, but it feels appropriate for how much range each of these have. But they are detinted, which makes recall significantly easier with this EQ. 5 bands, and one of the things that I really like is how far overlapping the frequency points of all of them are. For instance, on our highest band here, it goes up to 24K, but it goes down to 760 hertz. And then the next band, we go from 310 hertz to 10K. The next band, we go from 128 hertz to 4.1K. The next band, we go from 33 hertz to 1K. The next band, we go from 10 hertz to 330 hertz. Each of these bands have a range of cut by 20 dB or plus 20 dB. Each of these bands have a quarter dB switch independent of each other, so that way you can adjust each band independently plus or minus an 1/8 dB at a time with detinted recallable pots. That is unreal. In addition to that, you have got a bandwidth for each one of these. They go from 15 to 0.6, so very, very narrow to fairly wide, pretty wide. In addition to that, each band is independently bypassable. You can engage or disengage each band independently of one another, and you can have them engaged or proportional EQ, proportional curve for each band independently. This makes this one of the best feature set mastering equalizers that there is out there on the market. Now, in addition to that, you also have a master bypass here where you can bypass the entire EQ with the push of one button. In addition to that, you have this auto bypass feature. And when you engage this, it will, depending on what you have this knob set to, it will auto bypass and then re-engage the EQ on timed intervals, and that's how you set this, whether you want it to be really fast or really slow. And it will auto bypass and engage this EQ, so you can close your eyes and just listen and make sure that the moves you're making are actually enhancing the music. You know, I do this all the time with plugins. I will take my mouse and I will close my eyes and I'll put my mouse over the bypass knob of the plugin, and I'll click it really fast a bunch of times without looking at it. So that way I don't know whether it's engaged or not. And then with my eyes still closed, I will just click it and click it and click it. Every, like, you know, however, depending on the source, maybe it's every 2 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds. And I do that so that way I'm making sure that I'm actually making a difference, a positive impact on the music. Very cool for a piece of hardware to have that already in here. Something I've been doing with plugins forever, but not really something that's that easy to do with a piece of hardware. Now, how I have kind of grown to have this set up and the way that I use it almost all the time is I really like this top band set to 24K, as wide as it will go, and this is my air band. This is if I want to brighten everything up or open everything up without actually feeling like I'm necessarily adding top end, and this is so good at that. So the top band normally stays there. The next band lives in the like 10K range. So this will get changed based on the song, but fairly wide curve as well. And this is my top end of the EQ that I use all the time. Next up is where I try to cut some harshness. So it usually is somewhere between like 2.5K to 4K depending on the song, and it's fairly narrow, as you can see here. And this is usually where I'm cutting some of the harshness, some of the honkiness, some of the nasalness out of the music if it needs it. And then next up is the 1K. This is almost all the way up to 1K. Now, I will say I do kind of wish, because of how I have grown to use this, I do kind of wish that this went up to 1.5K, because there are very, very seldom times I would like to go just a little bit higher than this, but I'm always on my mix bus EQs. I've been doing this for years. You guys can go back and watch mix tutorials over the past 4 years on the channel. I'm always boosting mid-range on my mix bus EQ and very often in my masters. It's one of the things that is so important in music, and having a tool like this that sounds the way that it does, being able to do that is awesome. Fairly wide curve on that. And then this band I keep in the low end for the sub bass usually. If I want to sculpt that like below 60 hertz range most of the time on most of the stuff that I'm doing, it's usually what I'm doing. I'm trying to sculpt that sub bass. Sometimes it will just be general low end, but the sub bass is usually what needs the most work on mixes and on stuff that I'm mastering for other mix engineers. And so that is generally how I have it laid out most of the time on most songs. And this is one of the reasons why this has been my Holy Grail EQ for the longest time, because I need 5 bands. I've always needed at least 5 bands in order to accomplish what I want to accomplish on my mix bus. And if I had a 4-band EQ, it doesn't do it for me. It doesn't have enough flexibility for me to justify the rack space and the cost. I need at least 5 bands. This has it. It sounds incredible. Let's take a listen to some sound examples. Okay, so this is a song that I mastered for an artist by the name of Susie Jones. I actually worked with Rhett Shull on this one. I'm sure many of you guys know who Rhett Shull is. He's a fantastic guitar. He has a fantastic guitar channel on YouTube. I will put links to all of their stuff down below, in addition to links to this song and to the music video of this song that Rhett posted on his channel. Do me a favor, go check it out. out, go follow them, go subscribe to them, as thanks for them letting me use this song in this video. As you guys know, it's really difficult to find music, to have permission for music on the channel. And so I really appreciate this. Rhett Shull recorded and produced this. I think he did this all to tape. He also mixed this, and I mastered it. So great job, Rhett. Pumped to work with you on this, and it's a fantastic song. So I've removed all of the other mastering chain that was happening in this song, so we're only going to be listening to just the difference that the EQ makes. So let's take a listen to the song right now, and then I'm going to put the EQ in. This is already recalled for what it was. Then I'm going to put the EQ in here in a little bit. Here we go.
Want to get confused by disinterest, and I'm not in the mood to face rejection. I don't waste my time. I know I ain't got much of it. I don't ask myself why. I know I'm polite. Might be in it for the chase. Is it wrong if that's the case? If I just want attention.
So, in my opinion, this just takes the entire mix to a really smooth, polished, finished place. I am being fairly aggressive for a master, especially in the mid-range, but it's what I felt was appropriate for the song. And whenever I make changes this drastic in mastering, I always make sure I tell the artist or the client, hey, look, I'm going to be fairly aggressive on this because I feel like it's the right move. If you don't like it, let me know, and I'll make it more subtle. For this song, this is what I felt was the best move. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to just bypass all of these bands individually here, and I want to run you guys through this and let you hear the range that this thing has, because it's crazy, especially in the top end. Here we go.
Want to get confused by disinterest, and I'm not in the mood to face rejection.
I mean, we're going 12 dB there.
I don't waste my time. I know I ain't got much of it. I don't ask myself why. I know I'm polite. Might be in it for the chase. Is it wrong if that's the case? If I just want attention, and I don't wanna be stuck asking, why don't you love me? Baby, I'm the shit. I call you, but you don't want none of it. I go on and on about you to all my friends, oh, and I don't want to stay quiet. I could focus on myself, walking off, mind my business, 'cause I know I have felt this too many times. To lay it on the line like this would be just reckless. I really wouldn't mind if I never confirm it. Might be in it for the chase. Is it wrong if
Now, before we get on to some more details about this EQ and the reasons that made me choose it over others, I just looked on Sweetwater's website, and the plug-in version of this EQ is $24.99 right now. $25 for the plug-in is crazy. That's a no-brainer. I don't say this very often. You should just go buy it. I'll put a link down below. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Now, I don't think it's any secret that I like hardware. For the most important applications in mixing and in mastering, I prefer hardware to software just about all of the time. And so I've been on the hunt for what my ultimate mix bus EQ is going to be for a very, very, very long time. And I do tons of mastering. At this point, I master more songs than I mix because so many other producers and mixers will send me EPs and albums to master. So I master tons and tons of songs as well at this point, in addition to producers sending me songs to mix and mixing my own productions. Now, there are a few things that I need out of a mix bus EQ that has kept me from going with any other options and any other more budget-friendly options. The first thing that I need is detinted pots for recall. There is no EQ in this whole studio. Every single EQ in this studio has detinted pots. I do not own any EQs without detinted pots. And I'm not going to say that I'll never own an EQ without detinted pots, but I need to do recall. I don't necessarily use much EQ in tracking. It's almost entirely in mixing, and I need to be able to recall those mixes. And it's just not very easy without detinted pots. So for my own workflow, I've just decided everything has to have detinted pots. Now, usually what that means is mastering grade equalizers, because almost no general EQs, almost zero bus equalizers or stereo EQs have detinted pots. There's a couple that do, but not very many. So that's the first problem that has kept me from going with a hardware EQ for a long time. The next problem is I need to go all the way up to 20K. I'm boosting 20K on my mix bus and in my masters all the time. And maybe it's very subtle, maybe it's a quarter dB, but I'm boosting 20K or above all the time on my mix bus and in my masters. And very few bus EQs go up that high. Now, the next thing that I need is, like I've already said, I need 5 bands, because just as how I described how I laid it out, I need an air band, a top end band, a upper mid-range band, a mid-range band, and a low end band. That's how I work with my mix bus EQ. And when I'm mastering, it's how I prefer to work. And anything less than those 5 bands capable of hitting those frequency points, it's not worth the money to me, and it's not worth taking up the rack space to me if I can't have those things. Now, one of the other things that I would be a nice to have, but not a necessity to have, is a high pass. But there are, as far as I can tell, there are no EQs on the market that have 5 bands with the frequency points that I need to hit and a high pass. It just doesn't exist. The next thing with an EQ is certainly if I'm going to invest in a hardware piece, if it's going to take up the rack space, I need it to not put me in a box musically. I don't have the room or the budget to have 4 or 5 different ultra high-end mastering grade EQs. It's just not an option for me, and it will never will be, because I don't got the space. I'm not a full-time mastering engineer. It just is what it is. And so that immediately crosses off just about all of them, because they're either, there's a bunch of them that are really good, but they're kind of soft sounding. They don't have the same transient impact. There's a bunch of them that are a little too colored sounding. They impart too much character, or they sound too specific. I just need a box that works on every single piece of music and adds something to the music. Not adding in color, but the fact that I can make every piece of music better when I'm running through it. And part of that is because of this 120 volt technology. So let's talk about it. So this 120 volt technology, 120 volt design that the SPL PQ runs off of, this is either the highest voltage of any gear companies that they run off of, or maybe there's some other companies that also run 120. I'm pretty sure it's the highest in the whole industry. And what this means is incredibly low distortion, incredibly high headroom, and incredibly high dynamic range. And it is definitely something that you feel. I don't know that you really hear it necessarily, but oh my gosh, do you feel it? Like when I'm running through this, when I'm running audio through this, there's just this sense of classiness. There is a sound to it. It definitely has a sound, but it is a subtle, classy, clean. I don't really know how else to describe it. It's amazing. I'm not even convinced that what it really sounds like is going to come across on YouTube here for a couple reasons. One, how I make these videos is I capture the monitor output path with a Tascam hard disk recorder. So you're hearing another round of conversion from a cheap hard disk recorder. And then there's YouTube compression on top of that. But in the room, when you're sitting here and everything's hardwired in and you hit engage, it's like, oh, words evade me on how to describe it. Now, does it sound better than the plugin? Let me know if you want a full video comparing the plugin to this hardware, because that might be a video that I'd actually like to make. The plugin is fantastic. I've been using the plugin for years now, and it's fantastic. It's not the same as the hardware. I don't know that there's a way to mimic that 120 volt technology with that high of headroom and that high of dynamic range in a plugin. And like pretty much every plugin that is modeled after a piece of hardware, when you push it to its limits, it starts to fall apart. It's a fantastic sounding plugin EQ. It's one of my all-time favorites, but it's not the same as the hardware. The hardware just works even better on every genre and on every song. It's less picky about the music that you put through it. It complements every piece of music even more than the plugin, and it just sounds classy. It's the only way that I can come up with this to describe it. The character that it has just works on everything. It's not too colored, it's not too saturated, but it's also not 100% transparent like a completely transparent EQ plugin. I feel very, very fortunate to have this here in my room, and it has been on every single song I've worked on for 7 months. Whenever it showed up, I'd have to scroll back on Instagram. This is not a piece of gear that is like, oh, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes I just use the plugin. Sometimes I'm just in the box. It's on every single mix and every single master for 3/4 of a year now. So I will of course put links down below. Right now, Sweetwater has the plug-in version of this on sale for $24.99. $25 for what I think is one of, if not the greatest EQ plugin, especially of a hardware modeled thing. That is a no-brainer. Go get it. Like $25, just go get it, in my opinion. But I'll also put links to the hardware down below. And of course, both of those links do go to Sweetwater. So I want to thank Sweetwater for sponsoring this video. I will put links to both the plugin and this hardware in the description down below, along with a whole bunch of other things that I use. And you don't have to purchase either of these. However, I would strongly recommend picking up the plugin for $24.99. That's an insane deal. But anytime you guys need any piece of musical gear, you can jump on any video that I have, click on any one of the links in the description below. Once you're on the site, you can purchase anything that you need, and it goes a long ways to help support this channel and help me keep making helpful content, tutorials, and gear reviews just like this. So thank you, Sweetwater, for sponsoring this video. Thank you guys for using the links anytime you need to purchase anything. And I think that's about it. There's not much left to say other than every day I come in here and I'm so pumped to turn this thing on and to run music through it. So pumped. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.